Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat. I am your host, Kristopher Hart. Nope, that is the third week in a row I screwed that up. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat, spirited conversations with interesting people. I am your host, Kristopher Hart. This week was fun. So let's talk about this week. First of all, I had a fantastic time last week with Travis Whitmire and Rasul from Buffalo Bayou. And if you've noticed, I haven't said Rasul's full name because I feel like I'm butchering it every time, but it's Zaranfar, and it feels like I'm butchering his name, but apparently that's how you pronounce it. Rasul's a great guy, and I loved that he just kind of talked, right? He just ran with it. I've always been fascinated with him. He's an interesting character, great guy. And him and Travis did the opposite. Travis didn't say two words, and Travis is. I've hung out with Travis a lot. I know Travis really well. I know more about Travis than he thinks I know about Travis. And he was so quiet and reserved, and I love that about him. Not that I loved it about him. I love Travis who's Travis, but I was surprised to see that he didn't have much to say. We're going to get him back on, and I'm going to get him greased, so to speak, before he comes on. Make sure I cover a few things here. First, the Whiskey Social. We've been pushing the last couple of weeks, mostly because we got hit with a few great things. A tasting of 4 40-plus-year-old single malts. Just quite a few things happening that has made we've also added like 10 new brands that have never been to the event before. So the event is growing substantially. And last we talked, we were at just over 75% capacity or something. And since that episode aired, we have seen quite a bit of traffic. So definitely go to HoustonWhiskeySocial.com, check out the event. We're going to be adding the Texas Whiskey Association to the event. That's not confirmed yet. I probably shouldn't say it, but who gives a crap? Who gives a crap? They're coming. We're going to do something with the Texas Whiskey Association so you could really get an at-home, down-to-earth perspective on Texas whiskey, because it is doing really good things, including Lone Elm, which I've been pushing them like crazy because I had Lone Elm's wheat whiskey the other day and I was blown away by it. So Lone Elm's cask strength single barrel whiskey, very, very happy with it. I'm ranting a bit. So today was an interesting episode. We had on an upstart. What do you mean an upstart? Well, an upstart, traditionally speaking, that when a new distillery opens, they get off the ground with what they got, right? It's kind of like when a jet clears the runway, they get off the ground as soon as they can. And these guys have taken a different perspective on it. So today we're joined with Zachary Hiller and Bryan Clary of William Price Distilling. Well, what's William Price? I've never heard of it. That's because they're not open yet. These guys started couple of years ago raising money for a distillery, and instead of struggling like most small brands do, they're grinding towards having the freedom and the financial backing from the beginning so that they can immediately release something that's inexpensive. And it's an interesting take on opening a distillery in Texas, and good guys, very good guys. So today we are joined by William Price Distilling. Please rate and review the show. Check us out on iTunes, Google Play, the whole 9 yards, including mywhiskeyneat.com, where you can find shirts and glassware. These beautiful, beautiful glasses, my favorite glasses in the world. We use Luigi Bormioli Vinotech glasses. The cheapest you can get them in the U.S. is on my website. I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah, sweet. This week's episode is brought to you by Highland Park 18. Highland Park is I've been a longtime supporter of Elise, the local rep. The brand is supporting the show, and huge fan of Highland Park. You guys know my story about my wife and our engagement bottle, and this 18 is hands down the best thing I've ever had from them, and it is a very special bottling as well, simply because it's amazing. I think that pretty much covers it. Without further, nope, not going to do it. Not going to do it. See what happens. I have a PR guy, a marketing guy I talked to for the event, which sounds super gross. I apologize for even saying those words to you." And he was like, "Hey man, you have to stop saying those words." So I'm learning. I'm learning to stop saying stop saying "without further ado," and to stop saying that I could not be a bigger fan. I'm working on it. But I appreciate you guys either way. So I don't know what to say besides "without further ado." Cheers. I know you're a lawyer.
Yeah. I'm doing this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure what else.
No, I came from the consulting world, but I'm doing this now.
This is exciting. I'm really excited for you guys. I just got off the phone with, and I'll say this on. Oh, we're on air, right? Yeah. So I just got off the phone with Spencer Whelan with Texas Whiskey Association.
Yep.
We talked about this whole controversy centered around the Wizarding Academy and the sommelier title thing. I don't know if you saw the second edition article that came out yesterday.
No, not yesterday.
So there was this initial story that broke about how, and I remember their names. It's Rex and Daniel. The two guys that run the Whiskey Tribe, I believe is out of Austin. Listen, if you're not in Houston, you're in Austin, Dallas, and those are the same city to me as far as I'm concerned. They both suck. No, I'm just kidding. They run a whiskey wizarding academy is what they call it, and it's this whole. They also own a distillery up there that they crowdsourced called Crowded Barrel. They're also founding members of the Texas Whiskey Association, and they are under some recent controversy for the term whiskey sommelier. Mm-hmm. And this article was written about them, putting them on blast, which was pretty. There's definitely a narrative there. It had some fair points, more than fair points. Most of it, I think, was actually a reasonable thing to take issue with. Mm-hmm. My problem is that whenever you do an expose, and the guy who wrote the article admits that he doesn't do this for a living and that this is really just a passion of his. But when you do an expose on something, you have to, in my opinion, you really should present something in a series of facts and let people derive their own opinion of it. Mm-hmm. Whereas the narrative of the entire piece is definitely to tear down this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so then they make some assumptions in the article about the intentions behind the name sommelier and blah, blah, blah. Whereas a lot of people feel like not a lot of people. That's a narrative I'm not trying to put on them. But there are some people who are taking issue with the term sommelier, where it has a long historic meaning behind it to become a sommelier. And they think that they're playing off the name sommelier. And I like as a way to manipulate and ask for X amount of dollars, mm-hmm. thousands of dollars for a 2-day course or 3-day course. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think, like most things in life, it's derivative of, right? So if you wanted to start an educational course around whiskey, mm-hmm. what would you call it? I mean, sommelier is the natural. My favorite, sure. And I know people are going to take some criticism, but there's a guy on YouTube. Look up Martin Risa. Martin Risa runs the Water Sommelier program. I said that right. Water Sommelier program at Patina in California. Water, not all water is created equal. It's not as illegitimate as you would think. It's actually very legitimate. The whole concept of what's good water, what's bad water, mostly because in America, our concept of what is good water to drink is super jacked. We love distilled water. We think distilled is pure, but there's no minerals in it. It's not good for hydration. And so I'm a big fan of the water somm, is what they call them. But the term sommelier simply is derivative of what has already been put in place. I don't think it's necessarily a capitalization on the term for financial reasons. I think what happens is we want to assume the worst in people, whereas I think we should just present it as, here are the facts. This mm-hmm. is what's happening. And then say, look, their issues is that it's not accredited. The Whiskey Sommelier program is not accredited by any credible source or anyone else, or blah, blah, blah. That's fair. I can't disagree with you there. But
what would be a credible source, though?
Well, and the problem is there isn't. That's how these things start, right? So typically, what happens is when any organization starts, you're the first,
yep.
and it's built around that.
Yep.
I get it. But at the same time, until you get that traction behind you, you're open to criticism. So,
well, even after they do get everyone behind them, they're still going to be open to criticism.
Sure,
you know, it's like
all the time.
You got to start somewhere. So
we did the Devil's River interview, and I in my mind, I thought, what's the best way to approach this that I'm not going to catch the most crap for? and I thought, well, I'll give him all the questions, let him study, let him prepare an answer.
Yeah.
And if it's a bullshit answer, people are going to call him on it. And if it's not, then I just realized I cussed early. Sorry, 4 minutes 52 seconds in. If it's endearing and honest, it'll come across endearing and honest. And for the most part, nobody had real issues with the interview. But still, there are those who are going to latch on to
haters going to hate.
Haters going to hate, man. They hate us because they ain't us.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was talking to Spencer Whelan, and I mentioned you guys, and I said there's this new distillery that's been grinding for quite some time. You guys have been a startup for, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like 2 years?
About 2 years.
Yeah, about.
You guys are 2 years. So typically what happens, first of all, before we get into this, let's have a pour or something.
Yeah.
So I brought a few things today. I had lunch with the owner and founder of Oak and Eden the other day.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you this. Before we get into Oak and Eden, and before we get too deep into it, I want to say this. So Oak and Eden is a new brand out of Texas where they have proprietized proprietaryized the idea of putting a toasted oak spiral in the bottle with the liquid. And nowadays we live in a.
Do they have a patent on that, or is it a trade secret?
They have a patent on it, and
they even have a
patent as to how the spiral looks in the bottle, leaned against the thing. Don't ask me how that works.
You should call me for the next one.
Yeah. So, anytime you do anything kind of remotely gimmicky, especially nowadays, there's automatically hesitation from the whiskey nerd, right? The guy that has 500, 600 bottles at his house. That being said, I am looking forward to trying this. I had their bourbon and their finished bourbon, and I had no complaints. It's about 2 years old. Enjoyed them. But the thing is that it's not actually bourbon. The moment you put that oak spiral in there,
so it's in the bottle.
It's in the bottle.
I didn't see that before.
Yeah, the moment you put that oak spiral in there, this now becomes a whiskey specialty.
Okay.
This is not technically bourbon anymore.
Yeah, I just didn't realize it was in the bottle.
Yeah, so I was pleasantly surprised with the two bottles I tried before. I've not tried the rye. This could be complete garbage. I have no idea. I will tell you, I had a fascinating conversation with the man, and instantly latched on to I love conversations centered around religion, and Oak and Eden, if that's not a hint at anything religious, I don't know what is. But we had a great discussion. Again, I have no idea what this tastes like. So we had a great discussion around, so he's religious, but not like dogmatic and in your face about it or anything like that. But his whole idea, which I actually support fully, teetotalism really started in America in the early 1900s, late 1800s, where we pushed for, from a religious perspective, we pushed for no drinking at all. And he doesn't believe that drinking is inherently bad. And I loved the conversation. It's something that I remember as a kid. I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and I remember my pastor telling me one day that drinking doesn't taste good. People drink, when you drink, it's drinking for a purpose. And I remember at 17 thinking that's got to be bullcrap. And I have determined as an adult that that's bullcrap.
Yeah, I mean, I had a complete opposite experience growing up. I mean, I'm Jewish. Everything we do, we go bless that wine and let's.
Sure, yeah, Catholics did it too. I've always been fascinated with the religious discussion around alcohol and the habits, because there are super religious or sections of religion that fully support alcohol, like you said, Judaism and Catholicism, and but the Christian in America, I might as well taste it real quick, is very much against it. That's young rye.
Yep. If you look at other cultures, like in Japanese culture, they didn't go through that anti-drinking period. So drinking is a part of life.
Yeah.
I mean, part of work is going out and drinking for hours after you're out of the office.
Yeah, and so we had lunch at Whiskey Cake. A great conversation. I have a profound respect for the guy. This is sourced young rye. It definitely tastes like sourced young rye, but it's in a $30 price range, $35 price range. And the spiral aside, I have no complaints with this. This isn't jarring at all. A lot of times you get this jarring $60 price for swill. I think it's priced appropriately for young rye, and
Now, do they say have they figured out a perfect time?
I forgot that sound I make. Sorry.
Have they figured out that perfect time of how long in the bottle that?
Yeah. So I know what you're going to ask. You're going to say, I had the same thought when I first met him at TDSA, Texas Distilled Spirits Association event. And I said, well, what happens if this sits on the shelf for a year? Is that spiral going to ruin the liquid? And he said, no. The spirals are specifically tapped out, exhausted, so to speak. I believe within 60 days or 30 days or something like that. So I forget the exact time frame, but it was thought of.
Okay.
That's part of the calculation.
You put a toasted spiral in there. It's like a tea bag. It'll eventually run out.
Yep. That's exactly what I was thinking about.
I thought it was listen, I walked away feeling like I made a new friend.
Yeah.
So I was fascinated by it. That being said, where were we? What were we talking about before?
Our grind.
Oh, your grind. You guys have been doing this for 2 years now.
Yeah, it takes a while to get started.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just trying to make sure that we have everything put together before we start,
because that's the thing about that. Let's talk about that. Once you start, you have to find a way to stay afloat.
Yeah.
So if you wait to start until you're ready to start, 2 years of your life and you guys aren't making juice yet. So and I know this will be covered in the introduction, but we'll say it again here. William Price Distilling.
Yes.
Right. So my guests today, Zach and Bryan, are planning on opening a distillery in the great city of Houston, Texas. William Price Distilling. The goal, though, is to not typically in Texas, and we said this before the show started. Typically, what happens in the U.S., a distillery usually gets up off the ground with a minimum. They're ready to go, and they're often in a business park with not a lot of room. And they put a lot of time and money in the building of a distillery, and then, of course, maintaining it, because we've talked about this before. You distill, and you have to wait 2 years, right? And kind of monitor along the way to make sure that it's even worth your time. Because after 2 years, if it's garbage, you got to start from scratch. And what you guys have done is you don't want to do that.
Nope.
You don't want to start with the bare minimum.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the laws have kind of changed to really kind of help what we're trying to do. I think in the past, when people have opened up, before you could drink in the distillery and actually sell on site, having some small industrial park, in the middle of nowhere was advantageous because it was cheap rent, right? But now that you can actually have people come in, that's part of our goal, is going to be able to be accessible, have people come in. That tasting room on site is, our first chance to watch people drink what we're making and what we're selling and have immediate feedback and kind of work off of that. And so in order to do that, we think we just wanted to make sure that we had a space that was big enough both to start and to grow into and do all of the stuff that we wanted to do all at the same time.
From the very beginning.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what is the bottom dollar, big picture number that you guys are aiming for before you even begin?
$2 million.
That is a exorbitantly high number, which it's good. I'm not criticizing it. What I'm saying is that you guys are really, really are waiting.
Yeah, we've really thought about it and talked to a lot of people, done our research, been to 50 to 75 different distilleries, talked to them. And hey, how did you get started? What's the best midpoint that we need to be at? And we're not rich guys. We're not Sagamore Spirits. We're coming in with a $15 million bankroll to do this.
Is that how they started?
That's how they started.
15 million.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you know Sagamore Spirits, their owner is the owner of Under Armour.
Oh, yeah.
So this Sagamore Spirits for him is a fun thing to do.
Sure.
For us, it's going to be our life's work, our goal, and what we plan to hand off to our kids in the future. So
I had this discussion with Rasul from Buffalo Bayou Brewing, which that episode hasn't aired yet. Had that discussion over passion versus financial goals and starting a business. $2 million before you even begin is a admirable, lofty goal before beginning. I don't work in that side of the industry, so I don't know. There are people who I know own distilleries who are going to be watching this. What percentage are you away from completing that goal?
We're about 7 to 8% away from completing that.
7 to 8%. So what's the goal? What's the? You guys have been in HBS and in Houston for quite some time. What's your idea core product before it's released? Are we talking sourcing whiskey? Are we talking a gin or a vodka? Are we?
You're talking about from day one when we open up what we're going to have?
From day one, and in another segment, we'll ask what your ultimate goal is before you release your own grain of glass.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, it'd be no surprise to you that, we're going to source. We've been talking to a number of people, both in Texas and out, just trying to make all the numbers work and find stuff that we like. And I think we found some people that we're going to move forward with once we're ready to do that. And even a lot of those people are going to start making with our recipe potentially before we start and then buy it from them later, hopefully.
Sure. Contract distilling.
Yep. And, I mean, you've got to, once we put our juice in our barrels in our house, it's going to take time to get them out, and raising that kind of money, I've got to go pay people back. So.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole issue with the idea. I'll never forget who told me this. Frank Krockenberger from Maker's Mark. Me and him had a discussion one day at lunch, and he had said, the fascinating thing about what we do is that you can open a brewery, build a brand, and close the brewery and fail before you could even open a distillery.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. And I forget who I had in here. The whole idea, I think it may have been Avanac, but we were talking about with a brewery, you could tell pretty quick if your beer's bad.
Yeah.
And with bourbon, it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes contact with wood before you realize this was a big mistake. And you've got investors to pay back, and so you've got to decide: do I want to do a gin? Do I want to do a vodka? What's the quickest way to make some money until we're ready to fund the goal?
So for us, I think we talked about that at length with many people, many smart people, and many smarter people than us. And I think what we came up with is
many smarter people than I.
I'm just kidding. Smarter people than I. English is not my strong suit at times. But the idea is to not put all your eggs in one basket.
Sure.
If I decide to go out there and make bourbon and want to sit on it for 4 to 6 years, who knows how good it is going to be in 4 to 6 years, right?
Sure.
So you try and get rid of your risk as much as possible, which means
in the interim.
So you make a vodka, you make a gin that provides some income. You source some whiskey from people who've made it for 100 plus years. They know what they're doing.
Sure.
You hire whiskey consultants to come in and be master blenders for you. I jokingly say that I'm not in it to be the production person. I'm not in it to be the creative person. You don't want me doing your final tasting of whiskey and blending because, sometimes if I get a little too drunk, I want to go get Taco Bell at, 2 in the morning.
Sure.
That doesn't always mean the best bourbon.
Yeah.
So you stand on the shoulders of giants.
Right.
You hire people who are
So you're
smart
passionate about it. You love it. But you acknowledge the fact that you're not going to be the thing to shape the taste because you don't trust yourself.
I don't trust myself in the creative side, and the more people in the room who are smart at doing that, the better.
Sure.
We would love to eventually be there to where we could do that ourselves, or have someone on staff who does that. And that's the goal, is to have someone on staff who does our creative side.
Right.
Until we get to that point, until we can finance that, we're going to use outside consultants to do it.
Sure.
We're going to.
You guys talk to Nancy Fraley?
We have talked to Nancy Fraley. She was too busy with 50 to 60 brands to do it herself. In fact, this bottle comes from Nancy Fraley.
Yeah. And I'm such an avid admirer of hers for so many reasons. I really want to get her in here.
But we talked to her. She said, I'm a little too busy, but these are the people you should use. These are the people I would use if I wasn't doing it.
Sure.
So those are the people we're using. We have a master distiller doing our design and our equipment design. And he has, was it 56 years of distilling experience.
Is this a name that I know?
Michael Delavante?
No, it's not.
Yeah. So, he actually comes from the rum world. So Appleton Rum is putting out a 50-year-old rum. And he said, don't buy it. They didn't pay the guy that much who made it, because I made it 50 years ago.
Sure.
I was living on site getting paid nothing. It's not good rum.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, after 50 years, he's like, nope.
Yeah.
So those are the people that we want to bring in and hire on and do the creative side for us.
Sure.
So having those people putting all our eggs in different baskets, spreading around the wealth, to make sure that at least one thing will hit. And doing that all in timing with having them source our raw ingredients, do the product development as well. The people with the innate knowledge are the ones that we want doing our creative.
Right.
I could be a Travis Whitmire out there.
Sure.
And take 5 years before I start to learn it, and another 5 years doing it and bootstrapping.
But I've already taken 2 to raise money.
Yeah.
So
sure,
I'm ready to get going.
Sure. And let me clarify something I said earlier. There's nothing wrong with those who start from the grind early, before they have all the capital. I mean, what brands like Yellow Rose and what Travis Whitmire have done have built from the freaking first brick off the ground. And I have nothing but respect for those guys.
Oh, me too.
But it is a grind.
Yeah.
So I like the idea. If you guys getting to that point before, and if you've got the luxury of doing it, then do it. Wait till you get to that point. I love that we had you two and I had lunch like a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And y'all told me a year and a half ago the mark was 2 million.
Yeah.
And the fact that you guys have set this. And you guys handed me a pamphlet of did I sign a non-disclosure? I don't think
probably not.
Okay, you guys handed me a business model that was the most. Dude, when I was wanting to start a whiskey festival, I was like, I'm going to start a whiskey festival. you guys handed me a business plan that was like 20,000 slides on PowerPoint.
But there's a reason that we have that. So once upon a time. I guess Bryan had left the oil and gas world and was went back to school. Yeah,
I'm gonna do this Magnus.
Great.
I haven't had cigar blend in a while.
Went back to school, to business school, and I had been thinking about maybe doing a distillery, just kind of in the back of my head. Wasn't really a thing at the time.
Sure.
And so I said to him, and we've been friends forever. We were college roommates, played rugby together, all that fun stuff. And so I said to Bryan, if you ever have to write a business plan, find out what it would take to start a distillery. And he goes, where? I said, I don't care where. I just want to know, pick a town, wherever business school is, start writing a business plan, and let's see what it'll take.
Wait, so you guys weren't in Houston at the time?
So he was in Arizona. I moved back here for law school, and I was probably a year or two out of law school at that time, maybe.
Yeah.
And so that was.
And you were in Arizona for what?
For graduate school. So I was getting my MBA by business.
I mean, and that was probably 8 years ago now.
About that, yeah.
So you both ended up back in Houston.
Yeah. So after grad school, he had like an outline of a business plan, but wasn't what you ended up seeing. He went into consulting. Loved it until he didn't. And, it's like I love my legal practice, but this is also really fun.
Yeah.
So, we kind of sat down. I think I actually brought you down to help me cook in the rodeo cook-off one year.
Yeah, because you've got your hands in a little bit of everything. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the
Renaissance
rodeo.
man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's something that I've always said I would do if I ever got to the point where I was able to. I've always said two things if I had money, right? I would have 12 kids. I wouldn't stop. We'd have a new kid every year. And, as long as my wife would put up with me, kids are amazing. But the other thing is there's so many things that I would dip my toes in, psychology, therapy, brewing, winemaking. I would inundate. My wife would hate me. Keep my mind super sharp.
Having a wife, I have slowly pulled back from some of these things. Love you, Donna. Happy birthday.
Today's her birthday?
It is her birthday today.
Nice. And you came here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's still at work, Yeah, so I got him to come down to the rodeo, and I think we were just watching the pits overnight, and it was that day we're like, okay, whatever it takes, let's find out what actually it will take to do this, and let's get it going. And so that was kind of the beginning there, and then it has slowly blossomed over time, and even the deck that you saw then was nowhere near from the first version. It's probably like version 20 something. Yeah, we're another
version 29 right now.
So it has slowed down since then because we had the vision by then. But we have been grinding just in a different way than other people do.
Sure. So sourcing first. Yeah. That's the goal. Bourbon?
Yeah, I think so. I think ultimately, the stuff that we're going to source, I think we had kind of talked about it, trying to mirror as closely what our final products would be.
Staying on brand.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the stuff that is sourcing, it can be so different, and it's all about how you blend it together and which barrels you actually get. So to say that the flavor profile of that first source thing that we put out will be the same as what comes out of our barrels in a couple of years, who knows? I think in the long term, we'd like to do a little bit of everything. But to start, we'll source the things that we like and that our people like. And
do you mind sharing which brokers you've talked to yet?
I don't think so yet.
Okay. All right.
If only because we're not under contract. We haven't really signed anything.
Sure.
I don't know if they would appreciate us telling them yet. Because I imagine there'll be some legal paperwork forthcoming.
Sure.
We do have a separate broker for rum as well. So we're looking to source rums out of the islands as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm. From where?
Out of the islands.
Oh, from out of the islands.
Yeah. So that broker definitely does not want us to reveal trade secrets, but we don't even know from what distilleries. We just know from what country.
So early on in this show's development, I was always caught up trying to figure out what the opposite of a red flag was. I would always say that. What's the opposite of a red flag? Right. But it doesn't have the same ring to it, right? So
maybe a green light?
Well, right. And so I kept trying to find a way to signify that I'm hearing a lot of great things, right? As an enthusiast, there's some things you want to avoid. There's some things that'll automatically cause you to lose credibility. When you are hearing a brand say certain things, you automatically are going to go, ugh, or right? So, and I figured it out. It's boxes to check, right? There's just a couple of boxes that I'm looking for that are not red flags, and the fact that you're doing a rum. What do y'all's? Let's narrow this down. Let's tighten this goal here. So, okay, so if we're going to be sourcing at the beginning, what are we sourcing? Are we talking 80 proof flavored this, or what's the goal?
So, one quick easy off, low hanging fruit is a nice rum from the islands.
Okay. What's a nice rum?
Something that's tasty. That's we're looking around, an 86, 90 proof.
Okay.
Probably aged and master blended. A nice plantation style kind of rum, a four square.
So with
it would be a goal.
Maybe sugar added. Is that what you're saying?
No, not always.
No. But you're open to it.
But we're open to it.
Okay.
We're looking across the spectrum to make sure we find what's within our palate as well as what's the most transparent
Sure.
And
Okay, so transparency is important to you.
Transparency is extremely important.
So you're saying that you're okay with your focus is taste as long as it's transparent.
Our focus is taste as long as it's transparent, but more important than taste to us is experience.
Okay.
So when you sit down and you experience a product, sometimes you can go drink a PBR at a dive bar. That's a great experience. Does that mean that PBR is a great beer? Or you can sit there and you can have.
Okay.
I think I heard Dave Pickerell come on, and he said he liked some really good bottles, and it was all about sharing them with friends.
Okay, so let me give you a little pushback.
Okay.
Okay. Let me hold your feet to the fire a little bit. What you just said is basically that more important than taste is experience. And let me clarify. The lawyer in you is just bending over backwards.
Yeah.
So what's more important to taste is experience. That's what you just said. The problem is that as a producer, you can't control the experience. So if you put out pardon my French, a shitty product and hope that it's experienced in the best positive way, you see the concern there.
So I think a little bit of misspeak. And so I think obviously you need a good product. I think,
sure.
I think nowadays a good product is a prerequisite to being successful.
Very true.
Agreed.
Right. And
Agreed.
so if you don't have the good product, who cares what the experience is?
Right.
Is what I would add to that. But I think by the experience that Bryan is really kind of talking about is really what we're looking for at the beginning is going to be getting people to come to the distillery and experience it with us there. Obviously, there's going to be some distribution and what people do at home with that bottle. Sure, you can't control that.
Right.
But having people come in, be comfortable, share a glass with us, tell us what they think about it right away, having some sort of whiskey education, in the distillery, something like that where we can really connect with the consumer and them actually be part of the family and experience it with us is really, I think, what Bryan was trying to say there.
Yeah, I was really trying to get to that as the seed that gets
too late, no take backs.
But tours, blending classes,
right.
What Iron Root did with the distilling camp.
Oh, dude, Iron Root. Listen, man, and I know they listen to the show, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your butts, but the distilling camp, you went to that, right? You went to the first one. Did you go to that one?
Nah, I couldn't go.
You missed it, right?
Yeah.
Or did you originally sign up for it and you couldn't make it?
I was going to. I can't remember why I couldn't make it, but
I'm still planning on going this year. But there's a chance I might not be able to make it.
Unfortunately,
and it kills
I can't
me.
go this year either. But that's what I'm talking about.
Their grassroots campaign has been. Everyone is talking about. Speaking of not being able to control that final experience, they have done a good job of really bringing people in the most down to earth, honest to God, family way possible. And I'm such a freaking fan of Iron Root.
Me too. I'm a big admirer of what they've done along the whole way. I've bent their ear to find out, more information of how they got things done, and their experience is not 100% what we're trying to replicate. But
it'd be hard to mirror.
Yeah, but what your feelings are with them is something we're trying to replicate. And with those feelings, we'd like to do that through great products, through great transparency.
Right.
If you source something from Kentucky, it's going to say Kentucky on the front of the label. It's not going to say it on the back.
Ooh.
You're not going to see Texas Kentucky whiskey.
You're going to see a flag of Texas in an outline of the state of Kentucky, something like that.
Yeah.
Clear marketing, clear.
That's a standard that a lot of. So the minimum requirement for those who don't know, the minimum requirement for out-of-state distillation is that it needs to be on the back of the label, right? Along with so steady distillation is required at minimum on the back of the label. The fact that I'm gonna hold you to that.
I'll put it on the front.
Put it on the front. I agree with you because I don't think anyone cares anymore. I think the biggest thing that people care about nowadays, even the nerdiest of nerds, or the snobbiest of snobs, is transparency. And I think if it's a good product, and you're transparent. I mean, Plantation is killing it right now in Texas. They're the most transparent, but also the most sourciest of sources of sourced rum. And no one gives a crap. Well, one guy gives a crap, and he's making great rum in Barbados. But the consumer is happy, and I think the fact that is a box that's been checked from the very beginning with you, I think is a very promising sign.
Yeah,
and my hat's off to you for that. So rum to start with. Putting out a bourbon as well.
We'll put out a source bourbon.
We're talking young?
I
Old?
think it kind of depends on the prices when we're ready to pull the trigger and what is actually available. I mean, those inventories change very rapidly.
Sure.
So to say what I would buy now when we actually have the money and the permit and are able to open, they're going to be different things.
Sure.
So
I would say the goal would be something around a 4-year-old Kentucky bourbon as a minimum standard. Basically.
And what's the price point you guys are shooting for?
We're really trying to shoot for a price point of around 40 to 45.
So sub $50.
Product.
Yeah.
That base product.
And I remember this discussion at lunch with you guys almost 2 years ago. The number keeps growing. 4.5 years ago, we had lunch, and you guys told me that you wanted to hit all the initial reservations with sourced whiskeys, or with bourbon period out of Texas. You wanted to hit above a certain age before it was released, below a certain dollar after it was released, because the biggest complaint that Texas has is the inherently higher price for a younger product. And you've got phenomenal brands like Balcones, and I'm going to give. There's two things I want to say about Balcones real quick. First thing about Balcones is the first distillery that I know of in Texas that has just lowered prices. And yes, there's an inherently higher price when you're a Texas distillery and you're a startup and you're young. And you have to make a better margin, right? You're struggling fighting the big guys.
That's what the sourcing was for.
Right.
Right.
But Balcones is the first distillery I know of in Texas that once they doubled distillation and then double it again, they were like, we can afford to drop the price on our baby blue. And it went from $43 to $32 a bottle or something. And that is such a not a necessary gesture, but a very, very respectable and endearing gesture that you're willing to say, okay, look, we were only charging this much because we needed to, and now we don't need to. Anyways, my point is that the other thing I won't say, I'll take it back. I'm not going to say it, but the other thing was about the feud between Chip Tate and I'll say it. Forget it. I don't give a crap. we have 2 segments to fill. For those of you who are listening, and this is really my plea for reasonability, and I love to beg for reasonability from people. There was a feud. For those who do know, there was a feud between Chip Tate and Balcones where he was essentially the founder of the company and was eventually ousted. From a consumer side, when you hear the story that a founder was ousted, you think, oh, man, that guy got ripped off. He got screwed. I'm mad. I'm never going to buy this brand again.
It's the default reaction.
It's the default reaction.
Yeah.
I have since, a long time ago, I found out some things about all that. Now, when it first happened, I never took a stance. It's none of my business. I mean, when that whole thing happens, people want to fight for the little guy. They want to defend that person. I have nothing but positive thoughts about Chip. I have no feelings either way. However, there's more to the story than just. There's always more to the story than what just is there and what's advertised. And there were reasons things happened, and no matter what those reasons are, good or bad, as a consumer, you're not going to get the full story from news articles. Just stay out of it. Support, if you like the brand, support the brand. I'm a huge Jared Hempstead fan. Jared has been at the company since the beginning. He's their distiller now. He is the most down to earth, nicest, kind of quiet. If you've ever talked to him, he's such not obtuse, he's introverted. He's not extroverted. And I'm very extroverted. I love the guy. And it's not, just stay out of it. That's what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is we live in this era, and we've kind of gotten a little political on the show recently about left and right and how things get exposed, and like this whole MAGA hat kid thing. And within 24 hours, everybody was mad, and then everyone's defending, and then everyone's mad again. And it's like, just don't worry about it. At the very minimum, this kid that was involved in this whole thing was just an a-hole 16-year-old. At the minimum.
You mean a 16-year-old?
Yeah. Like, just listen. And this is me being philosophical on the show that has nothing to do with you guys, but
just letting you go.
It's so much easier to just love people.
Yeah.
If I'm out in public and I see something happening that I'm against, I voice my against, right? That's wrong. Stop it, sir. If you see something in the news, there's no way that's the whole thing. And we're in such a rush to get mad. I saw a meme recently that said, when you're looking for a yellow car, you can see yellow cars, right? You'll notice them everywhere. If you're looking for a reason to be mad, you're going to find reasons to be mad. We live in such an era of hate. Don't focus on the hate. Just love each other. Just be nice to each other. Get together, have drinks. It's so much easier to project love than it is to get caught up in drama. Mm-hmm. And everyone's watching this like, what in the hell does this have to do with you guys?
Nothing.
So
everything at the same time.
I have so many thoughts I can't voice on Facebook because it spirals into vitriol and hate from my left friends and my right friends.
What you will love is our whiskey.
Yeah. Back to that. So what is the ultimate goal of what do y'all want to put out your first grain to glass product? What are your minimum standards that you guys are, what's the dream? I want to put out this.
So I always said that our goal is to make a nice flagship bourbon, and we'll sell our soul to get there. We'll do
first of all, put that on a goddamn shirt. Say it again.
We want to put out a great bourbon, and
that's not what you said.
A flagship bourbon. Put out a flagship bourbon, and we'll sell our soul to get there.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
You
know what that is? That reminds me right off the bat. Is that thing outside the Blanton's Bottling Hall at Buffalo Trace? Is we make great bourbon we sell great bourbon at a loss if we or what's I forget the whole phrase, but essentially it's like we make great bourbon at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always great bourbon, right? The whole goal is we want to put out a good bourbon and we'll sell our soul to get there.
Yeah.
Dude, put that on something.
And I'd like for it to be higher proof.
Okay, what's the goal there? So your flagship bourbon, what's your ideal flagship bourbon? What are we talking about? Proof, age, what does it say on the label?
I'd like to see something at least 100 proof. I think age kind of depends on how quickly we can experiment with keeping it from evaporating in Texas summers.
Have you seen my show before? We talked about this.
Yes.
I think what size barrels are you planning on using?
53.
Okay, so you want to go full.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I have a theory in my complete ignorance because there's far smarter people out there in distillation than me. I think the secret to Texas is larger barrels. Our standard has always been nationally 53 gallons, right? Mm-hmm. We Texas whiskey started with the smaller barrels as a way to cut corners, a way to cut cost and to be feasible, not necessarily to cut corners. But there are distilleries, a lot of Texas distilleries are experimenting with full-size barrels now or larger, 60-gallon, 65. I forget how big the beast is at Iron Root. I think the secret is less surface ratio to liquid in the Texas heat means a slower aging process.
We're also both engineers by school, I guess, not necessarily by trade.
Yeah, but that's like Arizona.
That's sure, right? No, well,
it's like the McDonald's.
We lost you in St. Louis for undergrad. That's where our engineering degrees are for.
Okay, what are your?
So I'd like to see it at 100 proof. I think that obviously if it's evaporating and we need to put it into a bottle, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Again, it's got to be a good product to sell. So, but I'd love to figure out a way to make it over 2 years, which I think is what most people are trying to push to now. I don't think you'd see too many, high proof 2-year bourbons made grain to glass in Texas.
Sure. I mean, Whitmire's got one hell of a one.
Well, yeah. And he's leading the charge right now.
He's killing it, man.
Yeah,
he's killing it.
I'm a huge fan. He's
Stuff's great.
His shop is like half a mile from my in-laws.
Yeah.
So
that's a good place for it to be.
It's when people come to visit on that side of the family, it's like let's go check this place out. Always a good time over there. But if there's a way to make it to 4 years, which who knows if we can do that, but that's what I would love to see. I don't know if the first barrel we empty will be that old, but I think that's kind of where I would like to see us settle down, at least in the short long term.
So
if that makes
4
sense.
years, 100 proof minimum, sub price of still $50, sub 50.
So yeah, that's what we're hoping for, and I think in order to support that, we're going to have successful sourced products to help keep us afloat.
Sure.
And so I think to maintain a
That
long-term sourcing, product line that will help us keep the pricing down, like you just talked about with Balcones. They figured out a way to make it less expensive, and so it's less expensive. And whether that is from subsidizing or from someone else, I'm not saying I'm going to charge a bunch of money for the source stuff, but
sure.
we've got to make a profit on that so we can make less of a profit on this.
Right. So again, all boxes being checked. So before I get into my next question, you guys are still drinking that. I want to jump.
We're one ahead of you.
Yeah, we're on the.
Oh, my apologies. My apologies. I want to jump into this Glen Grant. So they're not a sponsor of the show, but I'm a huge fan of Campari, and some of their obviously they make Wild Turkey. Glen Grant released a 15-year-old bat strength edition. I believe it's all ex-bourbon. We'll just say it's ex-bourbon. They're 15-year-old Glen Grant bat strength single malt for $60. 15 years old, right?
Yeah.
Let me say that again. 15 goddamn years old. Bourbon nowadays, 15 years old, you're going over $100.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that single malts are now releasing bat strength, which in this case is 100 proof, is just
fantastic.
And I've had this product. We're huge fans of it. I just wanted to push it on the show because I love it. And it was a new product last year, 2018. But I'll take the Spill Mead Sherry any day.
Yeah, and I think for us that bourbon 100 proof, 4-ish years is probably the same numbers that we told you at lunch back in the day.
It is. I remember.
But I think obviously having that flagship
that was
bourbon,
8 years ago, by the way.
8 years ago, right? Having that flagship bourbon, I think, is important. I think I'd also like to see us making some rum at some point in house. That's also aged. And those are the two things that I like to drink the most, and that's really the reason that I want to make them.
Have you tried the Jamaican overproof I've been pushing?
Yes, I have. I do have a bottle of it. It is delicious. I thought you were going to ask if I had tried the HBS
Plantation,
which I haven't, because someone who graciously picked it up for me keeps forgetting to deliver it. And he might be sitting at this table and not have it in his backpack.
HBS Plantation, I'm a fan of as well. It's very easy drinking, so I'm a huge fan of the Jamaican funk, the muck pit dead body funk that comes with Jamaican whiskey or rum, and the HBS Plantation pick is more of a muted version of that at 101 proof or something. Big fan. Let me ask you this, and you guys didn't come on the show for this, but are you guys? You said you're 7% away of your goal. You guys open to investors? If people listening to this say, "Hey, I want to buy into this," is that you guys open to that or no?
Yeah, I think certainly we are. I don't. There will be a cap. Once we get that money, we'll be done. But if there are people listening, easiest way is just find us on Facebook, William Price Distilling, and send us a message. And
your page is already up?
Yeah, it's up. It's been up for a while. It doesn't have too many. We haven't been pushing it since
Sure,
there's nothing
because
to
there's
push.
nothing to push. Yeah. But you guys are committed to this. I mean, 2 years in and raising
the page is up. I mean,
$2 million.
We've been a legal entity for a while, even though we're not operating. If there's people out there with money, we're more than happy to go over the finer details and take it, and they can be part of the family. So
William Price Distilling Facebook page. If there is someone out there that is looking to contribute and help them reach their goal for a Texas-made grain-to-glass product, and of course the sourced things, you can find you guys on Facebook to reach out. Is there an email address or potential that you'd like to put out there?
Yeah, if you want Zach, Z-A-C-K, at William Price Distilling, come straight to me. Bryan, B-R-Y-A-N, at the same
William Price Distilling.
.com. Yeah.
Okay. That's exciting. I mean, I remember when we met 12 years ago that you guys had this goal. Let me ask, have you guys found a location yet?
Yes and no.
What does that mean?
Yes, we found it. We're working on negotiating terms.
Okay. For ownership?
For lease.
For lease.
Are we talking about a industrial park? Same thing?
No.
You guys want a full thing? Is there going to be like a Copper and King situation in which you have an actual on-site large enough storage for several hundred barrels, that sort of thing?
This place that we're looking at now works, then yes, we will be aging on-site for a good while. There's enough space.
We'll at least have about probably a year to 2 years worth of product, aged product on site. That being said, we would love to expand to another offsite facility and open up a secondary location.
Sure.
Such as, a rick house with a whiskey garden attached to it.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of brilliant. Where are we talking about? What, you don't have to say exactly where, but are we talking inner loop?
Yes, inner loop.
Like what's the Eighth Wonder Brewing is like right in the heart of Edo, and that's like that area.
Even more inner than them is all I will say for now.
Okay. If this doesn't work out, may I add just my own 2 cents?
Yeah, come on.
Go.
So something happened this year that when it happened, I thought, how in the hell did this not happen until today? And that is, there's going back to, we talked before, I don't know if this was on camera or not, but I'm a huge comedy fan, and I'd love to get a lot of comedians in here and just have drinks with comedians and talk to them about, not any comedians that like whiskey, right? Not the Houston Improv, but Warehouse Live, which now has the Secret Group. It's a comedy club here in Houston, and I'm a huge fan of it. That's Houston's alt comedy scene now, that location. And Edo, East Downtown, it's been a good spot for a while. And then this year, right next door, Morgan Weber opened Vinny's Pizzeria. And I thought, how in the shit? Wait, can you say shit on camera? Or no. How in the hell? He said hell? He said hell. How in the hell did they not open a pizza joint, a late night pizza joint next to
a comedy club?
If you go to Austin,
no, you walk outside.
If you go to
he wants a pie.
If you go to 6th Street, they have a window service at past midnight of these pizza joints. You can order a slice right on the side of the street. And I thought, how did Houston not have this until Vinny's opened up? And they opened it right next door to the comedy club, and it's open till like 2 a.m. And I thought, you're gonna be so freaking rich in like a year. It's so GD genius. I could say GD, right? I never. Anyways, my point is that you guys opening that place, that dream of having that grassroots and bringing people in around other attractions in the area, whether it be a bar across the street or a pizza joint right next to that, or Eighth Wonder right there, depending on what you guys or where you guys are located, having reasons to come there besides you guys in that busy area, I think is pretty smart.
And one of the things that we plan on doing is being in that downtown, East Downtown, Houston Central location for a reason. again, there's other distilleries that started before us that are out in the sticks, and just don't get the foot traffic.
Sure.
So if we're pushing a brand that values family and it values coming to our facility, enjoying the tour, doing a tasting, and then sitting around for a drink or two after, and getting that seed of a great feeling every time you take a sip of it, you think of that tour.
And then take a bottle home, of course.
Yeah. But the whole idea is just the foot traffic to it. And if you don't have a location that is a destination, then it's not going to come. So we want to have a destination distillery.
And obviously what I'm about to say, what isn't going to happen on day one, we're going to have to build to it. But if we were to get to a point where we had to shut down the tasting room early because we sold out of our annual allowance of proof gallons that we can sell in-house, would be a good problem to have.
Yeah. Right.
And that's not possible if you don't have people.
Yeah.
You know? So
there's this great little winery on the west side of town called Nice Winery. Guest of the show, friend of the show, Ben Songer was on the show with our friends over at McAllen. And before they moved to Pennsylvania as like the treacherous jerks that they are, we had a going away party at Nice Winery, and it was such a phenomenal experience. Business park, but a cozy build out. Mm-hmm. So people can come in, sit on some couches, drink some wine. My wife and I were so blown away by the experience there that we were like, why do you guys not have a location at Baybrook or a location on the north side in the Woodlands area? Like the idea that of a local distillery opening up and you guys being able to somehow transfer some distilled products to maybe a tasting room on the west side or a tasting room on the north side, I think is such a genius idea that it kind of blows me away that I don't know if any Houston breweries are doing it, but I know for sure no Houston distillery is doing it. But a Houston distillery with tasting rooms all over the city to help build that brand is a freaking genius idea. And I can comfortably and within my realm of knowledge say that it's not that expensive.
Yeah,
relatively speaking.
Well, yeah, compared to what we're already trying to do, I
sure.
mean, it should be able to pay for itself. You know, we should have no problem walking into anywhere and getting a line of credit to build that out.
A good example of a distillery that's actually doing that is Wiggle Whiskey out of Pittsburgh. So they have a distillery about a mile away. They have a tasting room, and about 2 miles away across the river in Pittsburgh, they do have a rick house with a whiskey garden, all within about 2 to 3 mile radius in downtown Pittsburgh. So that's, we've gone and talked to them and talked to other people like them, and that's a great idea. I'm standing on someone else's shoulders doing those kind of ideas.
Mm-hmm. Everything is, I think we talked about this before the show too. Everything's derivative of on the show. Everything's derivative of each other.
Yeah.
The idea that a rising tide raises all ships,
mm-hmm.
right? So you pull from the things that work, you get rid of the things that don't, you learn from each other, and then all of a sudden you have a beautiful drinking culture.
And I can tell you, I mean, everyone that we've talked to that has come before us of doing this has been just, increasingly helpful and telling us, don't do this. I did that. It was a terrible decision. But this thing over here, it seems to be working for us. So,
right.
And that's part of the reason it's also taken us so long, because we wanted to have that vision and be able to kind of.
So let me ask you, do you guys have a projection of when you'll be done and ready to go?
As an opening?
No. I mean, hit your mark and proceed.
Hit our mark and proceed is about 45 days.
Hopefully.
So within 45 days, you're going to hit that mark.
Yep.
And then hit the ground running.
Lease should be signed in about 60 days, and then we should be hit the ground running at that point. And it's about a year build out for everything to be ready. Yeah. Permitting.
Plus whatever permitting hiccups that there always are.
There always are, sure.
And lead times for our equipment. So we have minimum of 8 months lead time.
How big of a still are you guys looking at?
It's at 12,000 or 1,200 gallons. 12 gallons.
So 120 gallons, so you can fill 2 barrels a day. Column still, you said?
Pot column hybrid.
Okay, just like Boone County and a few others.
Will give us flexibility in some things.
Pot column hybrid.
Out of Scotland.
So on top of sourcing, do you guys plan to do a gin? I would highly recommend it.
Yes.
Yes.
Avanac is killing it right now.
We're going to do
Yes.
a vodka and a gin as well.
Ugh.
Well, you got to have the vodka to make the gin.
Well,
I mean,
There's
Yeah,
all
I know, but you
Yeah.
know, hey, it might not be your wife that likes to drink vodka, but I know many.
are
of
you
my
gender
friends'
stereotyping?
No, I just know that many of my wives.
Oh, dang.
You know?
Outrage 2019,
All
bro.
right, it happens. People like it. You got to have something for everybody.
You have a group of 10, 15 people come in,
Someone's going to want
and
vodka.
one person hates whiskey, and they want to go
Sure.
because there's nothing for them to drink.
That's why the Whiskey Social invites other spirits. One, I like a lot of spirits.
Yeah.
I like anything that there's some effort behind it. And so we invite. We've got a couple of rums this year. We've got a couple. I think we have one gin actually, maybe 2 gins at the event. We still keep everything whiskey oriented. But did you go to the event last year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I remember
Yes.
seeing you. What'd you think?
Yeah, it was good.
It was great.
It was
Oh,
great.
what does that mean?
No, that's
Dude, bro.
It was good.
These jeans make my butt look big. Answer my question.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Did the
Yeah.
Al Young tasting, then
We
we did the BTAC tasting, and then
Oh yeah. So how were y'all after that?
we were feeling great.
Yeah.
After
that's
hitting
what
the
I'm saying.
70-year-old
I had a
rum
good
too?
time,
Yeah.
you know?
All right.
You know, we
Not to
had
put you
that
on the
at-
spot on
we went-
camera.
We went straight over to the 70-year-old cognac.
Oh,
Was
the
it,
ancestral from Maison Ferrand.
Yeah.
70-year-old blend of cognacs is freaking ridiculous.
Was delicious, and and then
Shout out to Greg Doxakis.
Don't remember too much after that, but Ubered home,
Sure.
responsible. Everything was delicious.
Real quick, and then we got to go. Now that you're on camera, the only way this episode's going to air is if you promise me your first single barrel pick when it does happen.
Of course.
Okay,
All right, done.
done.
Appreciate it, guys. All right, we've got to go. That was 4 full segments. It flew by. Cheers.
Yeah,
Cheers.
cheers.
Oh, you're empty. Nope, sorry. Pour something in the glass, then we'll cheers.